And our next speaker this afternoon is Matt Crisp. Now, Matt is one of the UK's leading creative thinkers on cities, inclusion, invention and technology, and the impact on the environment, the economy and people. He's chairman of the Laboratory of Thought in Amsterdam, focusing on the issue of mobility, partner of Smart Cities Advisory Group, Field Lab, and startup mentor at Georgetown University in Washington. Matt started his career in commercial and marketing at Diageo and then founded the creative agency Brave. He combines private and public sector advisory roles and has recently led and advised several high-growth companies in smart cities, tech, design and mobility, including Big Belly, Eden Spielman and Transit Screen and Applied Wayfinding. I have this new bio, so apologies that it wasn't beautifully read out, but I'm sure we will have some really interesting insights from Matt. Matt, can you join us? Thank you.
Hi everybody. Gosh, a bit bright up here. Anyway, look to get cracking. So, I always like coming to tech conferences and always like talking about people because they often get ignored. And I'm really interested in how people move around cities, how people live in cities, how we increase public health, how we increase inclusion, and focus on all those people that maybe don't get looked after. 1.3 billion people have a disability. Most of them are on your transit systems. Only 4% of businesses have anything to do with it. It's an $8 trillion market that's been underused. Now, the key issue around sustainability is probably does your city burn, flood, shake, or poison? Climate, sustainability, net zero. I think we're now in the process of regeneration. We now need to start adding into the cities rather than just taking away, because the issues are too big. And every single city has been designed by a man. Every single city has been designed by a man. And I think that's really interesting when you look at the composition of cities, that they're not designed for mother taking child to school, mother taking, meeting mother to go to hospital. All those sort of smaller regional journeys, it's all been focused on economists and engineers. Optimise the machine, marginalise the human. And it's an area that I'm really interested in. How do we actually build around humans? Because the core function around life is around quality of life. I met my wife in a pub in London. I have my kids in the city. There weren't machines there, it was a conversation. But we're managing and designing movement, we're managing and designing coming together out of our cities and out of our daily life. And the impacts on public health, mental health and lifestyles are huge. But change is coming. You can see here, Fifth Avenue, New York, spot the car. There it is, very small. But 13 years later, there's no horses. Change is always coming forward. It's how we build positive change. But this whole thing about cities and about transport is that you expect them to be these tech utopias. It's utter fantasy. I've sat on smart cities councils all around the world. It doesn't happen. Things are really hard to get away. But what's important? You want to feel safe. You want access to transport. You want access to a beer. You want your deliveries to arrive. My daughter seems to have something arrive every single day. But it's about quality of life. For better or for worse, streets should be places you want to live. They shouldn't just be thoroughfares for transport. We've built cities based on the car. Like, I'm an ex-ad man in my youth. And I think Ford did the best ever thing when he said that cars were about freedom. All they've done is taken the freedom away for everybody else. Why should every child be frightened of a road? Why is transport a disutility? Why isn't transport time useful? You can meet friends, have enjoyment, have fun. But we don't talk in that time. We talk about efficiencies. We talk about getting things to A to B quickly. Why is speed such a necessity all the time? So it's interesting, but there's multiple negative externalities. Mobility is a massive greenhouse gas emitter. It's a top cause of death outside of many markets, certainly in young people, and it's a massive poverty trap because it gives you access to opportunities. The Harvard study, transportation is the largest factor in escaping poverty. So when you're building your built environments, you have to give people access to affordable, accessible transport built around their needs. In New York, the lack of access to public transport leads to the highest unemployment and lower incomes. The data doesn't lie, but still we build transport systems based on the economies of getting people outside of cities into cities via cars. We've got 1 billion parking spaces in the world. Think of the use of that land. There's more parking spaces in LA than the whole of Central Park in New York. 50% of Paris is over to the cars for only 10% of the journeys. And 1.3 million people die every year. The biggest killer of young people is cars outside of the US. We know the reasons for that. But still we have this automotive-driven market based on cars. How do we build things based on human need around public health? How do we build movement back into daily life where our bodies are maladapted to this tech life of sedentary and just-in-time and delivery? So the current mobility system is not sustainable, but the global demand for mobility is growing. And technology, whether it's an autonomous car, an EV car, cars and vans are going to double on the roads in the next 20 years. That's the plan. We've already got global gridlock. We've got 24-hour tailbacks in Shanghai, but we're still building more and more cars. EV cars, you speak to Ford, they're the best thing ever because people are now buying 2 cars. 1 car and the EV car. So it's just more cars. We don't need more cars, more congestion, more pollution, more roads cutting across our communities. We need less cars. But mobility is really hard because it's multiple stakeholders. There's cities, there's businesses, there's society, and they all have varying and competing incentives, which is a challenge. And it's a system. And it's interconnected with everything else, like housing, education, infrastructure, finance, regulations. How do we make systemic change in mobility? How do we base it around human need rather than the needs of certain individuals and automotives? Because the movement of people and goods is really complex, and it's not simple. So I chair, as one of my roles, a thing called the Lab of Thought, which is based at the University of Amsterdam. And it's basically around collective thinking. And it brought together some of the world's leading academics in mobility, but not from this tech bro, tech will solve the world, but from social science. So sociologists, led by a guy called Marco de Bomstroet, Dr. Cycling, the cycling professor. And it's a really interesting process where we all got together and they argue. They don't agree on anything. Academics are worse than like creatives. They all argue, they all fall out. But what we came to is actually, how do we design stuff for people? How do we design things that actually work? Where actually we build loneliness, we improve sleep, we reduce stress, we reduce things like diabetes, because we build movement back into life. Now, everyone loves Lego, apart from that 3 o'clock in the morning time when you step on it in the dark. But we've lobbied Lego. Lego didn't have bike lanes on their Lego cities. Now, you can see that Lego thing there. Look, you can see it's normal life. There's actually a truck across the bike lane, which is really good. And actually, Lego cars have now got 2 blocks. They've even got even bigger, like sneaky car companies. But actually now, through the university, we've now built Lego with bike lanes because actually children need to know that there's a different way. Education is absolutely fundamental to this working. So yeah, we're the mean people that lobbied Lego. Lego said that actually putting bike lanes in was political. Yeah, nice one, Lego. So we're quite campaigning. We're quite advocates of a bit of mischief. And here's another thing we did in Amsterdam. That's just one of the sort of small things we're trying to do, just to raise awareness of how we can try and take control back of public space. I'm really interested in things like play space. I'm not a great advocate of putting football pitches, skateboards, skate parks, because it just drives it purely for boys. And there's an awful lot of girls that like to play in different ways. And there's lots of projects we're now doing. So we're working on promoting mixed bike use, streets. We've got a whole range of stuff. We did the UN mobility thing in Amsterdam. Marco de Bomstroet did that. We're doing bikes with kids, protected bike lanes, a whole range of different stuff activating. But the reality is we're now doing stuff with some of the bigger companies. We work with Ford on Park and Stride, building public health into actually walking from park and rides. We're talking to Bolt about getting females to ride scooters. Why doesn't young women in other countries use scooters and bikes as much? How do we drive behavioural change? And there's lots of multiple big companies now that are coming to us saying, how do you test our ideas through your lens of education and social science? Because getting back to the topic of today, infrastructure drives behaviour. Like I had a very interesting chat with a London council around bike lanes and around paint. Paint's not infrastructure. Would you take your kids to the 10th floor of a hotel, open the doors to the balcony and just have paint there without actually any protection? You wouldn't. But why is it fine on the road? So I'm interested in those sort of topics. If you have a sprawling suburb and you're joining everything up, it just leads to more automotive drives. We need to have other forms of mobility, active transport, meeting friends. We've got an epidemic of loneliness, an epidemic of diabetes. 70% of all our deaths are caused by our lifestyle by 2030. 90% of all cancer is caused by our environment and our lifestyle, not by inherently anything else. I'm working with UCL and public health around all these different issues around how do we build cities that actually drive people to be more active in their life. So this illusion that tech, whether it be data or real-time data, is going to just save all these problems, I think is quite fanciful, because dumb transport, walking, cycling, are often superior to car travel. I work for Applied, who designed Legible London. It's quicker to walk on most tube journeys in London than it is to get the train. So zero carbon emissions. People talk around net zero carbon emissions, but it actually tires are 50% of emissions. So whether an EV or an autonomous, it's still causing a major challenge. We just need to sort of think about how we design our cities more for people rather than for the car. So free exercise, be social with our friends. And then you go into places like stations, and it's really complicated. Get a Schiphol. I did some work with Schiphol around biometrics. They didn't explain to me how to use the tech. You can use the tech. I didn't know. So the right information. If you look at here, just put in, just past the elephant and turn left. Signage, making things accessible for everyone. We tilted all the signage at Heathrow so people in wheelchairs could see it. So there wasn't a refraction of light. So having simple ideas to make things easy for everybody is really important, because most people find it really hard. We all work in this industry. We find it simple travelling through stations, airports. A lot of people don't. It's highly complex. If you look at the sign, then that's the transit screen, another business I used to be involved with. That's outside the Chase Centre, biggest basketball court in Europe where the Warriors play in San Fran. But it's all the mobility data to get people home that night. Bikes, cars, Uber, all in one place, just at a glance you can take it. You don't need a fancy app, you can just see it. Working with Ford, I used to work for Diageo, and I remember it all changed when we had Drink Responsibly. Is this part of the car Ford ad, the Drink Responsibly moment for the automotive industry in terms of active transport and cycling? I think it's really interesting. I think it'd be really sensible maybe to design for shade in a warming planet. I think that might be quite a good idea rather than cutting down trees. I think urban regreening, I'm working with a company that does satellites now around regreening. I'm working with a company that does drones now for reforestation after wildfires in the States. Really interesting projects that we think are really worth doing. I think the most competed part in the city now is curbs. The dynamic curbs, curbside management will be the big growth area over the next couple of years as councils and governments try to monetize their infrastructure away from the DTC, direct-to-consumer world, which is growing, I think, by about 4 million parcels every year. And I always love to finish these things off with looking at the tech utopia. This is CES this year. And look at this. Everyone has that much space in the city to put your connected pods and your transit and your solar. It's all very good, but this isn't the guest one. This is Samsung, and I do know guys at Samsung, but look at these pods. There's no people, there's no bikes, there's no elderly people, there's no prams, there's no one having any fun, there's no one begging. But again, we just have this sort of utopia that everything's going to be survived by some tech, because obviously that can hold about 10 people down Oxford Street. That would be really useful. If you look at TfL, their strategy is feet first, inclusion and safety. It's not about tech. So I think that's really interesting. And I asked all the professors what their key thoughts are on mobility. And they talked about vehicles will look different. Streets will change. Space on streets will become precious and become resource. Data will integrate. Modes, payments, platforms. Personal needs will change. We'll be much more focused on our health, on our work and our social lives. Consumer choice. People want more choice. We've got a myriad of different choices now. I look at micromobility. Well, I had bikes and scooters growing up. It's just great marketeers like me who convinced you it's a new thing. Environmental drivers, and we're all much more comfortable having stuff sent to our homes and working from our homes. So that's me. Sorry, it's a bit quick, 15 minutes. Thanks a lot. Any questions, I'm happy to answer if I could see you.